This episode of Eye on Horror includes frank discussions about films which deal with sexual assault. Listeners who are triggered by content like this may want to skip it. If you want to hear us catch up and hang out, you're safe until about 16 minutes into the episode. That's where the heavy stuff starts. We hope you'll join us, but we'll understand if you don't.
And we here at the iHorror Podcast Network want to reiterate our stance that we condemn all abuse, we stand with survivors, that no film or art is worth supporting abusers, and of course, in light of recent news and allegations, we'd also like to say, fuck you, Richard Stanley.
Welcome to Eye on Horror, the official podcast of iHorror.com. This is episode 63, otherwise known as season 4, episode 6. I am your host, James J. Edwards, and with me, as always, is your other host, Jacob Davidson. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing good. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. Still waking up.
All right. I think we're all still waking up. Also with us, as always, is your other host, John Correa. What's going on, Correa? You waking up?
Yeah, a bit better. I got my energy drink on one side and a protein thing on the other. We're moving into the new place, so I'm calling in from the new apartment now. I'm dead tired though. We've been moving for days now, and then today's the final push / cleaning sesh. So, it was fun scrubbing a carpet by hand at midnight last night for an hour.
Wow.
There's a reason we're coming at you early, although even though this is the same time that we record every episode, we have with us special guests this week from the worst coast, not the best coast.
Wow.
From 3 hours in the future, we have Kelly and Bree from Murmurs from the Morgue back again. How you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Hello.
This makes the third time Kelly's been a guest and the second time for Bree. So Bree joins the exclusive two-timers club. Kelly takes the lead as a three-peat.
Yes, I got it.
Which has Waylon really upset because he thinks that he should be a four-timer because we had a couple false starts with him, but we go by published episodes, not recorded episodes.
So Kelly's our Steve Martin to our SNL.
Yes.
I'll take it. That's great. I love it.
Can you play the banjo, though?
Give me a year and I'll figure it out.
Okay, in a year, we're going to hold you to it.
My banjo solo on I Am Horror.
Oh, I really do love his bluegrass music, though. Like those.
Oh, yeah. No,
he's so good.
He's a pretty badass musician. A lot of people don't know that, but he's a hardcore musician.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do a real quick what have you been doing, because we have a dense topic, which we will get into in a few. But for now, let's what have you guys been doing? What have you guys been watching? Anything good? I'll go first. I watched, and I know Jacob did as well, The Block Island Sound on Netflix. And I think Jacob and I disagree on it.
Yeah, we're coming from two different worlds on this, literally.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've never, been to New England. Really, the closest I think I've been to New England is Pittsburgh. But I thought it was a mess of a movie. I couldn't. It's not that I couldn't wrap my head around it. It just didn't make any sense to me. And at some point, I feel like the filmmakers knew that it wasn't going to make any sense, because I feel like there's a tacked on exposition character. And Jacob probably knows what I'm talking about. At one point, the sister goes to see a guy, which, he's there to explain what's going on. And I even think that fails. I don't know. I just think it's a muddled mess of a movie. It didn't make much sense. Defend it, Jacob.
Well, I think it really captured kind of that New England cosmic horror kind of style, and like, was it sea legends? It was like the supernatural. And also, it did kind of genuinely feel like, like the New England fishing town with like surly characters. And also, although I just loved it because there is a scene where a character asks for a plata. So brought me back. But I mean, I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was pretty good though. Like, I thought it was an interesting blend of, like I said, kind of cosmic horror, but it also has this kind of small New England town drama with like the character, like the lead character dealing with like the death of his father and like his family's falling apart, and just kind of on top of that, the whole Block Island sound thing. So I think also just kind of made me homesick.
I will admit the way that they dealt with the dead father was pretty creepy. The way that he would just keep popping up in places, that was pretty effective. But I think see, that's another thing that lost me. You say that it's like cosmic horror, but I thought it was kind of grounded in reality until certain things would happen. And it's like it didn't know if it wanted to be cosmic or reality based. It didn't know if it wanted to be fantastic or uncanny, I guess, are the two things.
I don't know. I think it was just trying to be kind of ambiguous, or just kind of go into some different styles.
Well, if ambiguity was the goal, I guess they succeeded, because it left me scratching my head.
Got a great title though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Block Island is a very, very lovely place. I've been there a few times. It's an island off the coast of Rhode Island.
Did The Perfect Storm make you homesick too? You probably lived there when The Perfect Storm came out.
No. That's the thing. I got family who lives in Gloucester now. Yeah, and that's where it took place and was kind of based upon. Funny story, I actually got my picture taken with one of the corpses from A Perfect Storm. Like there's like a booth where like they've got on display.
Wow.
Perfect Storm for me nails that whole New England fisherman thing.
Oh yeah.
But this is coming from someone who knows nothing about New England fishermen. All I know about it is The Perfect Storm. So of course it nails it.
Pretty much. Although I had to be honest, I grew up inland.
I can tell you right now, Blow the Man Down captures small town New England absolutely perfectly.
So good.
If you want to watch a super New England movie, Blow the Man Down, or even The Lighthouse, there's a lot of people like that in New England. Just
extremely
weird.
A lot of Willem Dafoes.
And a whole lot of Robert Pattinson's talking like a Kennedy.
Yeah.
Did I do a decent Kennedy? No, I didn't. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I grew up in Brookline, which is Kennedy country and where Conan's from. Yeah.
What else has everybody been watching? Anything good?
I watched a couple new things I liked. So like this week, two new horror movies came out that I really dug. First off, Ben David Grabinski's Happily. That was pretty interesting. It's like this. It's set up kind of like a rom-com or like I don't know, like a relationship dramedy type thing with
Carrie Beesh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was Carrie Beesh and Joel McHale. Carrie Beesh and Joel McHale played this couple that had been married for 14 years, and they are still madly, madly in love to the point where they irritate their kind of high-end LA friends, including Paul Scheer. And then Stephen Root shows up one day as kind of like this mystery man who says he's been sent by somebody to rectify their marriage because they're so happy it's unnatural, and he wants to inject them with something. And things start to go off the rails and crazy. And Joe McHale and Carrie Beesh's characters go to like this couples retreat at this fancy high-tech house. And yeah, it was very interesting. Like it was like I said, it was kind of cross genre, but it was very well written. Like I loved kind of the character interactions and the dialogue.
I love that director's name, Ben David. Like one word, Ben David. That's a great name. Ben David Grabinski.
Yeah, he also did that Are You Afraid of the Dark reboot from a couple years ago,
which was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. But Happily was cool. And this just dropped on Shudder. Slacks with 2 X's.
Yes.
Tell us about Slacks.
Oh, Slacks. It's the the movie about killer jeans.
Yeah.
And it actually was a lot more than that. Basically, it takes place at this, one of those kind of West Hollywood, Beverly Hills high-end clothing stores where they're releasing new jeans, like super, like top of the line, form fitting, anyone can wear them, made from high end cotton material jeans. And like the company also like just keeps on going on about how they're humanitarian and like they're charitable, but like everybody who works there and a lot of people who go to the store are kind of
The worst.
well, no, yeah. Okay, in part coerced, but like some of them are just like really
Oh no, sorry, I said the worst. The people that work there. Yeah, the people that work there are kind of the worst.
I thought you said coerced. They are the worst. That sums it up better. I was going to say jerks, but the worst is better because they're all very just kind of narcissistic and up their own asses, except for like the new hires, kind of naive and like one of the pants literally just comes to life and starts knocking off the people working at the store one by one in increasingly gory and like very creative ways. Like one of my favorites was like one of the clerks steals the pants to wear them for herself, and the waistline starts getting tighter and tighter until like she snaps in half. And and I really got to give the movie credit because the effects are a pretty good blend of kind of practical and CGI. Mm-hmm. Like it was kind of hard to tell between the two, but it's also because like they do kind of puppeteer the pants, so like it looks like it has a face in some scenes, or like it looks like the waistline is chomping at people.
Yeah. And actually the effects were done by I forget the name of the company, but they did the effects for Turbo Kid. They did the effects for Blood Quantum.
Oh.
Yeah, it's from the producers of Turbo Kid as well. So it's like it's got that very
and it's a Canadian movie. It is
Canadian. Yeah. So it's got that super sort of like cheeky, very fun, but at the same time like really talking about that sort of conspicuously ethical practices that a lot of businesses have, where it's like, are you really all that ethical, or are you just pretending to be that ethical for the sake of like people coming in? And I really liked that one. I think I did a review for that one on iHorror if anyone wants to check that out.
Oh, and I also did a review for Happily on iHorror if you want to check that out too. But yeah, I will say though, I did not expect a movie about killer pants to be so deep. Like it actually touched on some pretty hot button issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sounds a lot like that A24 put out a movie not too long ago about a dress that
in fabric.
Yeah.
It's very much like that. Yeah.
That I need to watch that one. They kind of dumped. Like, I don't even think that one has like a physical release anywhere.
Actually, it does have a Blu-ray.
It does? Okay. Because
it was just released like so under the radar. I don't think anybody really knew.
Yeah. I got that one digitally. So that would make for a good double feature, I think, maybe.
It really would. For
killer
sure.
dress, killer slacks.
Would it be a whole lot of the same movie though?
No, they're pretty different. Like, In Fabric is kind of like Euro, like surrealist, while Slacks is like almost a straight up slasher or monster movie, but it's jeans.
Just killer outfit day, put on your...
Yeah. Killer
All we need
fashion.
is a movie about a killer hat and killer shoes.
Yeah.
Then we can complete the ensemble.
I definitely feel that there is a killer hat movie out there.
Probably.
If not, someone needs to get on that immediately.
I mean, there's a killer bed movie, Deathbed.
True.
Deathbed. Yeah, Patton Oswalt had a whole set about it.
Yeah, there's Bed of the Dead as well, which is a Canadian one too that they also have. About.
There's multiple killer bed movies.
There's multiple killer bed movies.
God.
Yeah.
And none are by the Asylum.
Moments like this where I both absolutely love and hate our genre is that that line can happen. Just there's multiple killer bed movies made by people and no sequel. Okay.
There's also there's at least 2 killer refrigerator movies too.
Oh Jesus.
And don't even get us started on killer cars.
The Car is one of the best Jaws ripoffs of all time.
and it did it by combining it with by ripping off Steven Spielberg's other movie, Duel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's not even the best known killer car movie because, of course, we've got Christine.
And Maximum Overdrive.
Stephen King even ripped himself off.
Yeah, but did Christine have the Green Goblin face on it? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
But did the Green Goblin truck catch on fire and chase a guy down a street?
Not really.
Just that scene where Christine's going down that narrow alleyway. It's just, it's just so angry. I love it so much.
And then she catches the guy and she can't get to him. And he's like, oh, fuck you. And then just destroys herself to kill him. They go, no, fuck you.
Such a beautiful scene.
That's a carvitude. Yeah, but it's just we need to come up with like a compendium of different inanimate objects turned animate that have been made into horror movies, because like Jonathan was mentioning, you can look at the genre and just so many different things that come to life and try to kill you, like dolls,
tomatoes,
TVs.
Tires.
Oh yeah, tires.
Yeah.
A list would be endless, though, if you were to create such a list.
Oh, there's a killer sofa movie. I'm sure there's a couple of killer chair moves.
And there's a killer like washing machine one too, I think. Yeah, there's a couple. That's
on computers, so many killer computers.
Oh yeah.
That'll be my next list. I do.
Killer phones. Yeah, just
killer houses.
Killer art. Yeah, just just if you think about it, just anything could kill you, I guess. If it was possessed by a ghost or a serial killer or whatever.
If the horror genre has taught us anything, it's that everything and anything can kill you.
Which is true. Yeah.
Do we have any more new watches we want to talk about, or do we want to just jump right into our topic, which is going to be done? The only other thing I've watched is in preparation for our topic.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody else want to talk about anything that's not pertaining to the topic, speak now, or we're moving on.
So Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again is like the Magic Mike XXL of musicals based on ABBA's songbook. That's all I wanted to say.
Sure. Okay, so the reason this is a crossover with Murmurs from the Morgue is because this topic is so deep, we're going to carry it on to their podcast. This is a two-parter, and yes, you have to listen to Murmurs from the Morgue to hear the second part. And Murmurs from the Morgue listeners have to listen to us to hear the first part. But basically, this started as a discussion. Oh, it might have even been months ago. I know it's at least weeks between the five of us about basically, it started after we all saw Saint Maud, or most of us saw Saint Maud. Have we all seen Saint Maud at this point? Yep. Okay, good.
Yes.
Awesome. It started, we were discussing the difference between Saint Maud, which was directed by a woman, and something like The Exorcist, which wasn't, which is real religious horror-y. And we started kind of talking about the differences between the male and female gaze. And on this, on Ion Horror's half of this topic, we're going to mainly discuss the rape revenge films, because I think that we need a whole episode for that, and then we'll continue on Murmurs in the Morgue. Clearly, I Spit on Your Grave is the rape revenge film. And then we've got Promising Young Woman, directed by a woman. And also, this is what I watched to prepare for this, MFA. This is on Kelly's recommendation. And I almost think MFA is a better parallel. MFA, to me, could be Promising Young Woman with just a little more crazy, honestly, because both of the quote protagonists, because they're not good people, but they're the heroes, are crazy. But I think MFA, she takes it a little further. But let's get this started by just talking about the differences in the actual rape scene. I Spit on Your Grave I Spit on Your Grave is clearly a female empowerment movie. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But the actual rape scene is so uncomfortable. It's not fetishized at all, but it is first, it's a gang rape scene. She gets raped by these four guys in the middle of the woods, and then they leave her there. So she walks home naked in the middle of the woods, and the scene takes like 15 minutes to unfold. And then she walks home, and they're waiting for her at home for another 15 minutes. You're like, no, just let this poor girl go. I mean, I understand the filmmaker is trying to generate anger, which it totally does, because anything that the girl does after that to these guys is justified because of this ordeal she's been through. But it is so graphic and so, like I said, not fetishized, but it is, and it's in no way glamorized, but it is definitely from the male perspective. And then in MFA, the rape scene, we should have said this earlier, but there needs to be trigger warnings all over this whole episode, because we're talking about stuff that could be triggering. So if that's you, you may want to skip this one, but I hope you don't, because I think we're going to have a lot of cool stuff to say. But you may be triggered. And also, we're going to be talking about a lot of spoilers, I think.
They're necessary.
But we'll try not to spoil anything that is too that is too surprising. I mean, like clearly there's going to be a rape in MFA because that's the crux of the movie. That's the inciting incident. And the way it's handled by the director of MFA, and her name is slipping my mind.
Natalia Leite, Leite. So I don't know how to pronounce that.
The way she handles it is, at first you think that it is just going to be just a brutal rape scene with this guy just, assaulting this girl. But then they do weird things with the sound. It's like the sound all gets muted. There's almost this ringing in the ears, and it focuses on the girl's face. You know what's happening to her in the rest of the room, but it's definitely from her point of view. And it is, I got the impression that it was taking you out of her body, like the same thing she was probably doing to get through it herself. She's going to another place, and that's where you went. And I just thought it was so interesting that it didn't have to show, and it was just as effective at getting you angry at this guy as I Spit on Your Grave, but it was not as, for lack of a better term, not as graphic. It still is angering, but it's not as exploitational. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for.
A thing to keep in mind also is that MFA came out in like 2017, I think, or
2017. Yeah.
2017, and I Spit on Your Grave came out in 1971, I believe. So there are like just going to be those cultural differences. Another thing I think is interesting about those two movies specifically is that in I Spit on Your Grave, the people who are committing these atrocities are just like these neighborhood boys. They're kind of like, ruffians.
Yeah.
Whereas in MFA, it's like a guy that the main character actually almost had a relationship with. She was like kind of close to him. And it was really just a miscommunication and a situation that got out of control that could very easily happen to anyone.
I think the thing that is really effective about MFA is, again, it's someone she knows, which statistically that's more likely to happen. And also the rape is really aggressive, but it's not violent. It's something that he doesn't realize, like he should realize, because she's saying no and she's saying stop, but he thinks that this is all fine. She confronts him afterwards and he doesn't realize that what he did was a horrible, horrible thing.
Well, to stop you there, sorry, but in my opinion, the rape was kind of violent because he's not only just sexually assaulting her against her will, but he's like throwing her.
That's right. He's like
and,
physically manipulating her,
like pulling her hair and like
true.
in a very aggressive way. So it's not like gang rape level of violence, but it was pretty violent in my opinion.
He's not like punching her in the face or anything, but you're right. He is throwing her around. He's pinning her down. He's pulling her hair. He's kind of shoving her face into the bed kind of. It is.
It's aggressive. Yeah.
It's not nice, sweet lovemaking. It is.
No.
It's an assault.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing as well with I Spit on Your Grave is, I can never pronounce his name correctly, but Myers Archie, he created the movie based on his own experience where he was walking home and he encountered a young woman that had just been assaulted, and she was brutally, brutally assaulted. He took her to the police and they kept asking her these questions about what happened to her while her jaw was broken. And he was trying to convince them, like, please just take her to the hospital. Let's get this taken care of. We need to get her taken care of. And so he was inspired to create this movie based on that experience and how horrific it was and how awful it was. And he really wanted to have something that would not necessarily be, it would be sort of empowering, I guess. It is a feminist film, really.
I'm glad you brought that up, Kelly, because we're not here to just like bash men filmmakers and be like, women rule, boys drool. Yeah. I do, in my opinion, as a female and watching I Spit on Your Grave, I actually kind of liked it, other than the fact that it was disturbing me the entire time. I did think that it really did come from a place of concern for women.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it is a little reactionary, but I do think that the filmmaker clearly had respect for women, or at least because of that situation, he was like, holy shit, women actually experience horrible things.
Yeah, he definitely, he is coming from the right place. The thing is, the differences in approach of the actual rape, the differences in the way the filmmakers emotionally manipulate the audience to get on board with these revenge seekers, I guess, is worlds different. The male gaze, he just hits you over the head with it, where it's much more subtle, but just as powerful. with the female gaze.
And you see that in Jennifer Kent's The Nightingale as well, because
during it's even more so in The Nightingale.
Because during that scene, it's all the focus is also just on her face, and she checks out, and then while it's happening, it cuts to kind of like the sky. It's almost like you're taking her perspective and putting you in her position. Whereas like a lot of older rape revenge movies, there's times where like how it's filmed and where the camera angles are and stuff, it almost feels like you're the assailant, which can be very powerful in that it's putting you in this position that you don't want to be. Because I don't think there's really anyone who's watching these movies rooting for anyone other than the survivor and just them getting out of it, you know?
Mm-hmm. No one gets titillated by "I spit on your grave."
I hope not.
No. Well, you've got problems if you do. Yeah.
Well, so on that subject as well, going back to that, there is like just this huge gap in time. I also want to bring up that like in the 70s, that was also around the time that war footage started being shown on television. So I feel that it is related in a way that it's like this is what's happening in the world. These are the atrocities that are happening. You're seeing it on your TV. You're seeing it in your movies. It's all related. And so I think that was kind of, not that I'm like defending it or anything, but I think it was just kind of like, one, a stylistic thing, and two, like the filmmaker kind of being like, this is a horrible thing, so you should see it.
Mm-hmm. On that, I think we should also talk about kind of the presentation, because I just as an additional thing, I do like to watch the trailers for these movies just to see kind of how they were presented to the public. And, you know, you watch the "I Spit on Your Grave" trailer, and because I feel like, it was just kind of being a product of its time. It was kind of presented in that kind of grindhouse manner where, well, especially back then, they kind of have to tell the whole movie to sell the movie in the 70s, because there wasn't really much other way to sell it. But yeah, just that it's, like it has this narrator who talks about like this woman was attacked and assaulted by these 4 men, and now she's going to get them back. And, just kind of shows, I don't remember if it was all of them, but it shows a chunk of them without actually showing the violence, that she's like kind of picking them off one by one and kind of leaving some of it to your imagination so that you'll see the movie. So it does kind of have that kind of grindhouse exploitation film aesthetic when being marketed. And then you compare it to trailers for modern day movies, like going back on it, The Nightingale, which is more, because Jennifer Kent, and the subject matter is kind of presented in a more high-end manner. It's like this is not by any means exploitation or grindhouse. It's got a higher tier.
The poster for "I Spit on Your Grave," I'm going to read the tagline right here. It says, "This woman has just chopped, crippled, and mutilated 4 men beyond recognition, but no jury in America would ever convict her."
Oh yeah, they use that in the trailer too.
Yeah, it tells you right there. It's like, okay, this woman is going to do all this shit and she's justified. And I think that that's part of why they make the rape scene so graphic, is because you have to justify. And that's the only way I think that, at least back then, that's the way that I think the man justified it, just by making it. He was thinking like a man. He's like, let's make this as brutal as possible. Whereas, I mean, I still can't get over how effective that scene in MFA was. I mean, it haunts me.
Related also to that, another difference that I noticed is, considering what you just said about that being justified, in a lot of the women directed rape revenge films, I feel like the police were a huge presence in them. Yeah. Like the main character was always evading the police. And that was kind of like showing like, oh, men are not going to be punished for their crimes, but women are going to be punished when they like retaliate. Whereas like when men tell these stories, it's almost like this fantasy of the women like being able to get away with whatever she wants.
Well, that was a common theme in Promising Young Woman and MFA, was like they tried to go by the actual, legal channels, and they were shunned. So they're like, screw it, I'll do it myself,
Yeah, I guess it's to highlight a broken system. And back on The Nightingale, like her rapists were soldiers and the constable, or so it's
exactly.
when she goes to his commanding officer, like he like he doesn't really do anything about it, and because he's an officer and she's a convict and an Irish convict at that, like nobody would really care. So a lot of these films kind of highlight the systemic failures and abuses that come with these.
And
wasn't
power dynamic.
one of the rapists in the I Spit on Your Grave remake a cop?
Yeah, it was a sheriff.
Yeah. So I mean, and that one, I mean, that was 30 years later.
What do you guys think about the remake?
I didn't watch the remake, I'll be honest.
And I was fine with it. It was, I think it was a little unnecessary, but I mean, I was okay with it. It's not as shocking as the original, but part of that is, like you said, the time period when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, this is 1978. How'd they get away with this? And that's the answer to the question. It was 1978.
Right.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to that idea that particularly in rape revenge films that are directed by women, that the authorities are kind of absent or even just sort of halting progress in a lot of ways.
They're complicit, in some of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes a problem for women themselves to solve, and it becomes about taking that control back. Whereas I think there's I can't remember the name of it, but I know that there have been a few rape revenge films where it focuses heavily on the justice system. There's one that's really just a court procedural that is about like the aftermath of this rape and going through the court process. And in the end, justice wins and it's great, but it sort of pulls back when you're, I forget the name of the movie and it's going to drive me crazy now. But when the film ends, it ends with a pullback shot on the courthouse. So the focus is on justice and on the courthouse and on that winning. Whereas in other films, when it pulls back, the focus is on the woman and her justice that she's found for herself. So there's a female self-sufficiency that can be found in rape revenge films, I think.
That's one of the things, because we've talked about it before. Promising Young Woman is one of my favorite movies of the year. In recent time, really. I've already watched it about 2 or 3 times. And all of these themes are coming up, especially the failed system. And a lot of Promising Young Woman is about her addiction to control. Like that's what she's doing with these men when she's going back to their place. She's not killing any of them. She's just kind of like putting them back in her place, becoming the person in control. And one of the unique things about that film compared to all these is there is no scene. There is no scene of the act. It wasn't even her. It was her friend. They do have audio play of it later on, but you don't see it. The character watches it. And I thought that was so powerful because one of my biggest things is we already know these acts are terrible. We already know this is a bad thing. We don't need. I always find it so lazy when filmmakers say, well, I'm doing this because, so people know it's bad. We already know it's bad. You need more. You need other motivation to do it.
But do they? Like it's happening so much. So like clearly some people don't realize like that it is bad, which is something that is mentioned in MFA. Like when the main character confronts her rapist, he's like, nothing really happened.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you like freaking out about?
I would say that's different because that's showing, it's like we already know that if you go out in a van and kidnap a random person and commit that type of act, we already know that's bad. But those gray area things, that definitely needs to be talked about. That like, we had a few drinks and it wasn't until it was already happening. So it wasn't, when those like supposed, gray areas or things, that definitely needs to be brought up and stuff.
Kind of along that same, line of implied consent. We were talking yesterday, and I don't think any of us, except for maybe Kelly, has seen this Violation. And Waylon was talking about a scene in Violation where a woman she's being assaulted, and then she says, "Don't stop." And then, of course, the guy's like, "Don't stop. Okay, I'm on this." You can correct me if the context is wrong on that, Kelly, but that's just hearing what Waylon was saying about it. It's almost like in these guys' minds, they twist it. They say, she said, "Don't stop."
And I want to talk about Straw Dogs a little bit too for that sort of content.
Straw Dogs is problematic because the actress in the original, not so much in the remake, in the original, the way Peckinpah directed it, you almost get the impression that she's enjoying this.
Yeah.
And it's so problematic. You're like, oh no, this is another dude's wife. She shouldn't be enjoying this. But if you look at her face, and I'm not sure if this was Susan George's, her own interpretation of it, or if Peckinpah said, give us a little bit of a smile and a moan. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I mean, yes, you're right. Yeah. Straw Dogs definitely applies here.
Definitely problematic as well. Like there's a quote from Sam Peckinpah in an interview he did with Playboy that says, there are women and there's pussy. So again, not really the best person to be. And the fact with Straw Dogs as well is that it's not a revenge film for the woman. It's a revenge film for the man.
Yeah. For the husband. Yeah.
For the husband who's like reclaiming like, no, this was my wife. Like it's a very problematic film, I think.
That's another thing I want to talk about that was really popular in the 70s is that there was a lot of movies, and that's where the female rape revenge film came from, is that there was a lot of movies, specifically like Death Wish and like what you're talking about, where it's about these men living in the city with their families, and then some like unnamed assailant like breaks into the dude's house or whatever and rapes and kills his wife. And then he goes out and takes revenge on these people. And that is like, it is kind of a reactionary thing. It's kind of like a racist response to problems in one person's city. And I think it is interesting how that did, like how it transferred into the female rape revenge film. So yeah, I do think that is related to the 1970s kind of like racism in the city.
And to go back to Straw Dogs, especially that bit where there is that moment of enjoyment. I remember in film school, we dissected the shit out of it for one of my women in film classes, and the professor was very adamant about it. And she goes, "Why do you think that this was included?" And obviously, after hearing that quote from Peckinpah, it's very hard to defend that. But there is bodily reactions to when these things happen, and it's something that's especially brought up when men are raped. There's always the line, "Oh, men can't be raped." Well, with enough stimulation, your body's going to react to things. So sometimes there is that moment in some, because again, different cases, things play out differently. And I just remember that the professor didn't defend it, but she said, we believe this is why that choice is happening, because sometimes, the body reacts to it. That doesn't mean that she wanted it. And that's a big part of that argument too, is that, oh, well, in this moment, this happened. And it's like, well, no. And it's the same with men. If there's enough stimulation, you can get a reaction out of it. And so the argument that men can't be raped is, again, invalid. If someone does not consent to it, it's non-consensual. That's very, to put it very simply,
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, speaking of films that are directed by women, and I'm going to look up the director's name, but Baisse-moi, which is a new French extremity film. That one, again, is about like these women that are taking that control back. And the interesting thing about that one that I found is during the rape scene, it's two women that are simultaneously being raped. And the one is sort of fighting and screaming and putting up one hell of a fight and just completely to no avail. Whilst the other woman is just like, she just sort of realizes like, there's nothing I can do about this. Why fight it? Like, there's nothing I can do in this situation. And it's a really sort of sad and interesting sort of play of recognizing that power shift, and it's upsetting. But again, like the fact that it was directed by a woman, and she recognizes that like
two women.
Thank you. Yes. Let's get their names.
Very French, so I will not be able to help you probably.
Come on, Canadian, give us our French pronunciations.
Well, she's not in French Canada.
I'm guessing Virginie Despentes and Coralie. That's my best French accent.
Better than any of us could do.
But yeah, so and I think the interesting thing with that one as well is that they actually used, I think, former porn stars for that. So there is actual penetration in that film as well.
Wow.
Pull the Lars von Trier on us.
I didn't need to know that.
Yeah. So there's a film that's fun with new French extremity.
Speaking of Lars von Trier, actually, going back to The Nightingale, I also wanted to mention the first time I saw The Nightingale, I was kind of surprised at the level of violence and disturbing imagery that was in it, considering that the only film that Jennifer Kent had directed at that point was The Babadook. But I recently found out that Jennifer Kent was actually a student of Lars von Trier, and she was on the production of Dogville.
Oh.
Which I think really says a lot about that movie specifically.
Yeah, and I actually saw it for the first time in preparation for this. And yeah, no, I was just kind of blown away by just how intense and visceral it was. And yeah, I mean, in part that was why I kind of put it on my watch list for so long. Just, you know, I wasn't sure if I was prepared, but no, it was, it was justified in its violence, I think, because, you know, like beyond being a rape revenge movie, it is a massive indictment of colonialism.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And there's another layer with The Nightingale. I mean, it goes beyond rape revenge. I mean, there's, you know, and I don't want to spoil anything, but if you really want to get pissed off, there's another layer to The Nightingale beyond just the rape revenge.
Oh, it deals with that. It deals with indentured slavery. It deals with cultural erasure. It deals with genocide. Like it's all these heavy things and done so well. But to go back to Kelly, you were saying about that scene where one of them, where it was two women and one gave in. I actually used to teach women and children safety classes, and especially with the women's classes, we had to talk about these subjects a lot. And one of the things that the hardest day of those classes was talking about the situations where you have no other choice but to comply in the moment because your life is on the line. Yeah. And especially, I was a teenager teaching these classes, so being 17 teaching and being the only man in the room, you know, it was always, those moments were the ones where I took a step back and let, you know, others in the class talk about it, because no one wants to hear a 17-year-old man say those things. But that was the hardest lesson to teach was, you know, if your life is on the line, comply. But, you know, we always had to teach, you know, look around you. What do they look like? What were they wearing? Try to gather this information. And that also sucks because we so much as a culture teach, you know, don't have too many drinks when you're going out. Watch what you're wearing. It's always the defense that we have to put on women to protect us when we're not teaching men. Just don't do these things.
Yeah, just don't rape people.
Yeah, just don't do it.
I remember hearing when I was, this was years ago, decades ago, hearing about a rape trial where the rapist was caught and he was on trial, and the victim, what happened is during the rape, the victim realized she was going to get raped. So she basically talked him into wearing a condom. And how she did it is she supplied him with the condom because she knew she was going to get raped. And how she talked him into it is she goes, well, wear this condom. And he's like, I don't have AIDS. She goes, how do you know I don't? And that planted the seed of doubt in his head. So he wore a condom when he raped her. So his defense during trial was it was consent, because she gave him the condom and he put it on. And of course it didn't work. He still got convicted because the woman, she basically used that. She said, I knew this was going to happen. I was just protecting myself from further damage. I still said no, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the interesting things going back to I Spit on Your Grave is that a lot of the concerns and complaints about it being quote unquote exploitative it comes more often from men than from women. And I think that it's because those socialized as women are raised with this fear and knowledge in a way that men aren't. So for us, it's still horrible and shocking, but we're raised with this idea that like this can happen. This does happen.
Right.
So it's
exactly.
Yeah. Heavy topic today, guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Especially compared to the last time we had you guys on.
Yeah.
We were fantasizing about about possible crossovers, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, and I don't know if you guys see this. Every time I see on the cable guide for Alien versus Pharaoh, I see Alien versus Pharaoh.
Yeah. Oh, same.
I'm like, what? They made another one?
Oh, God.
It's Mia Farrow on a ship with xenomorphs.
I don't know if we're gonna wrap up soon, but do we want to discuss the movie Miss 45?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I was just thinking about that.
I'm surprised Korea has not brought it up yet. Let's talk Miss 45.
Well, and I do think I'm absolutely loving this discussion because I was one of the ones that was so adamant about, especially talking about Miss 45, because that was a recent first time watch for me, and it left me very angry. Mostly because one of my biggest issues when it comes to films like this genre or Antebellum is the fact that we don't get to know these characters as people before these acts are committed. And that's my biggest grievance when it comes to these scenes of such extreme violence and such violation, is that we don't get to know these people. All we see is a body just getting assaulted and tormented. And with that, especially in those opening bits, there's a real stripping of humanity even before the act happens, and it's just a body. And I how I feel about it is that it kind of is just it in its own way. It doesn't fetishize it, but it detaches the audience and the viewer from viewing these characters as people. And Miss 45 is another one where we almost know nothing about this character. And then she's not only assaulted outside of her house in an alleyway, she's very quickly assaulted as soon as she gets home by another person. And I will say, after those scenes, the film really dives into the effects on her, and it does a really great, really fantastic job of iconography with her 45 and the red lipstick and
the apple that she kills the first guy with.
And I love that. But I just want to get your guys' opinions on that type of lack of character development and not really knowing who these people, like Promising Young Woman does a good job of showing bits and pieces of who these people, of who Carey Mulligan's character was before the act happened. There's a lot of talk.
Do they?
Well,
I really don't. I don't know, because I felt like that movie was like really detached from like telling anything about her backstory, even up to her motivations. I was confused about, which I think was intentional on part of the filmmaking, but still, I think that it was like pretty detached.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Brianna on that. We do kind of get to know Carey Mulligan's character, but we don't really get her backstory. Like everything is told secondhand. So, it's not, as upfront about it. And on the subject of Miss 45, like the other big factor is that the character is mute. So she can't even talk.
Yeah.
So, and I do feel like she was kind of, denigrated even before she was attacked, because like in the beginning, like the other seamstresses kind of blow her off, and like her boss is rude to her, and she's mute, so like nobody really cares for her. So exactly, that's the thing, like there's not really a lot of character to her so much as like she becomes just kind of vengeance itself, and goes after these guys.
It reminds me a lot of a movie that came out around the same time, which is more famous, Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
I feel like they're really similar characters.
And also on the iconography, there's also that scene where she dresses as a nun for Halloween.
I noticed that in a lot of these movies that like before some sort of murder or something, the women do don these Halloween costumes. Promising Young Woman, MFA, they're all wearing costumes. What's up with that?
Maybe it's just kind of a way for like masking themselves after the assault, or like showing a change in their character,
or possibly assuming a different identity when they do it.
Yeah. Because I think it's also like, particularly in Miss 45 and MFA, they kind of find freedom in the murder. Like the whole thing with MFA is just this whole side plot of when we first enter the film and we're learning about her as an artist, and everyone's saying like, oh, it's very contained, it's very censored. And then it's not until she starts going around murdering people that her art really starts to flourish. And I think with Miss 45 as well, like she kind of like, first off, she kills her rapist with an iron, which is a tool of her trade. So I think that's kind of funny. But the fact that the reactive murder turns to proactive murder, she's going after men who take it as their due to dominate and abuse women. And I think that it's the whole having her mute and not really knowing much about her is kind of a double-edged sword there, because on the one hand, it allows you as an audience to really sort of slip yourself into that character a little bit more, because but at the same time, you lose a lot of her character in the process. So it is sort of, it's tricky with that one. But
fun fact, that actress Zoe Lund. She was only 17 at the time that she filmed this.
Whoa, didn't know that.
I don't think there's any nudity in the rape scenes, is there? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No.
For Miss
Which I think
45.
maybe, for Miss 45, maybe because she was 17, perhaps.
Probably. Also, on Brianna's earlier point, like I feel like Miss 45 also kind of addressed those reactionary ideas from like because although Miss 45 was in the 80s, right?
Yeah, 81.
Still was around the same time period because like most of her victims are, thugs and criminals from around New York back when it was
New York City.
Yeah, when it was the big rotten apple. And also one of the people she kills is like an Arab sheik who picks her up.
Yeah.
And one scene in particular I remember is like she goes to what was it, Central Park, and like she's surrounded by this gang, and very typical kind of 80s looking gang of people, very background, wearing kind of run down clothes, and like they advance on her, and when she starts shooting, like she kills a couple of them and the rest run off.
Didn't she put herself into that position though? I mean, she
used herself as bait.
Yeah, she went hunting. Yeah.
Oh no, she definitely drew them in to try to assault or rape her, I feel like that was like, I think halfway into the movie. So it's when she's already racked up a body count and she's starting to get she's getting good at it.
She's earning her name, Ms. 45.
Her first kills were people who, attacked her. And then as it goes on, she starts luring men to kill.
Yeah. Again, it's sort of it starts as reactive, but she turns it proactive by being like, well, I'm going to go hunting for these people then and seek them out and kill them before anything happens, I guess.
Exactly.
And if you remember, the beginning of that movie actually starts with her walking to and from work. And when she's walking to and from work, all these men are catcalling her and like trying to like have sex with her. So I think that is kind of like that scene that you were just talking about is mirroring the beginning of it.
Right.
I think this is a good stopping point, I think.
Can I have one more final thought? Sorry. I just wanted to say that because a lot of these rape revenge movies, people are always like, they're so harmful to society, they're encouraging more rape. I personally don't find that these movies are like actually being damaging to society. What I think is more damaging is movies where specifically men are very blasé and being very rapey, but it's treated like a normal thing. For instance, like maybe The Breakfast Club, like constantly like goading women into dating them after they say no and no again. Like that kind of innocent writing of that in movies, I think is worse than actually showing like graphic and disturbing rape scenes in movies.
I fully agree. Or even movies like Superbad, where these moments where it's like, oh well, you guys just need more alcohol to loosen up, or oh, she's drunk, so you have to get drunk now because then it'll be cool. Where there's lines where it definitely blurs, ability of consent and stuff like that. I agree. I think those are far more harmful because, again, and especially having this talk, like I went into this very against having extreme scenes, depicted. You guys remember our early talks where I was saying fuck Miss 45. Now I'm reconsidering thoughts on that movie, but these other movies I feel much more damaging.
And they're also more consumed by the general public.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It normalizes that type of behavior, which is not super helpful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's continue this discussion over on Murmurs from the Morgue, where it will post 2 days after this. So go there and listen to us. We're going to go into different genres than rape revenge, so it might not be as triggering there, but I'm sure we're still going to trigger somebody because this whole topic is kind of triggering. Our theme song is by Restless Spirit, and our artwork is by Chris Fisher. So that's where you find those guys. Murmurs for the Morgue you can find on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. iHorror you can find Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all over the place. And you can find all 5 of us at iHorror.com. We'll see you in a couple days on Murmurs from the Morgue. So for me, James J. Edwards.
I'm Jacob Davison.
I'm Jonathan Correa.
Ellie McNeely.
Bree Spieldener.
Keep your eye on horror.